Welcome back, dear listeners, to another chilling episode of Shell's Spooky Stories. I'm your host, and tonight's tale comes to us from a former security guard in Seattle. It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things happen in places we think we know well. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for the night shift. Marcus worked security for 15 years before that night in February 2023. He'd seen his share of strange things: homeless people seeking shelter, teenagers looking for thrills, even the occasional break-in attempt, but nothing prepared him for what happened during his final shift at the Riverside Medical Center. Here's Marcus's account in his own words. "I need to get this off my chest. I've tried telling the police, my supervisors, anyone who would listen. They all think I had some kind of breakdown, but I know what I saw." The Riverside Medical Center was being decommissioned. After 40 years of serving the community, the old building was scheduled for demolition in spring. I was assigned to work the night shift during the transition period, just making sure no one broke in to steal the remaining equipment or vandalize the place. The first few nights were uneventful. Just me, my flashlight, and the endless corridors of an emptying hospital. But on February 13th, everything changed. It started with the elevator. I was doing my usual rounds on the third floor when I heard it ping. Now, the power to the elevators had been cut 2 days earlier, part of the decommissioning process. I distinctly remember thinking that as I watched those steel doors slide open. The elevator was empty, but there was something wrong with the air inside it. It rippled like heat waves rising from hot pavement. And the smell, antiseptic, but underneath that, something else. Something sweet and metallic. I radioed it in to dispatch, but the response was just static. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped. I could see my breath, even though it was a mild February night. The security cameras in the monitoring room showed nothing unusual, but as I flipped through the feeds, I noticed something odd. The timestamp on every screen showed different times. Some were hours ahead, others days behind. One monitor displayed a date from 1983, the year the hospital opened. Then the screen started changing. Not flickering or going dark. Changing. Instead of empty corridors, they showed bustling hospital scenes. Doctors rushing patients on gurneys, nurses checking charts, but everything was slightly wrong. The movements were too jerky, the people's faces too blurry to make out. I heard footsteps in the corridor outside the security office. Multiple sets running, but when I looked at the feed for that hallway, it showed something impossible. A group of doctors and nurses rushing a patient on a gurney, through walls that no longer existed. The hospital layout had been renovated several times over the decades, and I was seeing them use corridors that had been sealed up years ago. The footsteps got closer. I could hear voices now, urgent whispers and medical jargon, but mixed in with that were other sounds. Crying, screaming, the metallic clatter of surgical instruments. When I finally got the courage to step into the hallway, what I saw... God, I still have nightmares about it. The corridor stretched out impossibly long, much longer than the building's actual dimensions. And along its length I could see moments, like windows into different times. A young mother holding a newborn, an elderly man taking his last breath, a surgeon performing an emergency procedure. But they were all happening at once, overlapping, bleeding into each other, and moving through it all were the shadows. Human-shaped but wrong somehow. They passed through walls and floors like they were smoke, but their footsteps were heavy and real. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but every corner I turned led me back to that same endless corridor. I'd see myself running past the same scenes over and over like a video playing on loop. Sometimes I was ahead of myself, sometimes behind. I finally made it out when dawn broke. The morning shift found me in the parking lot, still shaking. I quit that day. Here's the thing that really haunts me. When they checked the security footage, all they found was me, sitting in the monitoring room for 8 straight hours, staring at static. But I know what I saw. They're demolishing the building next week. Part of me wonders, what happens to moments trapped in time when the place holding them is destroyed? Where do all those memories go? Those echoes of joy and pain and life and death? I drive past sometimes late at night. I can still see lights moving in the windows, still hear the footsteps. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see faces pressed against the glass. Not the shadows, but real faces, wearing expressions of confusion, like they're lost in time, trying to find their way back to their own moment. I've spent considerable time investigating Marcous's claims. The Riverside Medical Center's history is fascinating and troubling. Records show an unusually high number of unexplained events during its 4 decades of operation. Staff frequently reported equipment turning on by itself, doors opening and closing without explanation, and most intriguingly, temporal anomalies. Several nurses documented treating patients who vanished from their beds, only to be found in different parts of the hospital with no memory of how they got there. The building was demolished last month. But here's what's truly unsettling. 3 construction workers have already quit the site. Their reason? They keep finding hospital rooms that shouldn't exist, complete with equipment and paperwork dated from various decades. When they return with supervisors, the rooms are gone. Perhaps some places become more than just buildings. Perhaps after witnessing so much life and death, joy and sorrow, they become something else. Repositories of moments, collectors of time itself. And sometimes, if we're unlucky enough to be there at just the right moment, we glimpse what they've collected.
Thanks for tuning in to tonight's chilling tale, but the hauntings don't have to end here. If you love ghost stories and crave even more spine-tingling content, why not unlock the other side? Join our exclusive membership for bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes extras and much more. The link is waiting for you in the description below. And do you have a story of your own? Something that keeps you up at night? Share your experience through the links in the description. You might just hear your own story being featured on upcoming episodes. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, share it with your fellow ghost story lovers, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a shadow in the dark. Stay spooky, and we'll see you on the other side.